Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night, so it's halacha and Tanya. I just want to start off by saying somebody just sent me a very interesting clip. Everybody's still making a tumult about the elections, but the Rebbe says a very interesting point about it. The Rebbe spoke about elections in a democracy, and the Rebbe said the old difference of opinions is only before the elections and during the elections. When the elections are over and you follow the majority, that's a democracy, that the majority opinion rules. So then technically, even the minority is supposed to be accepting the majority vote. And therefore, that causes the unity now of the people that were all one under the same banner. Before the elections, you want this candidate, that candidate. But once the candidate is chosen by the majority, and democracy means the minority also is supposed to accept the president or whoever it is. So that brings out, on contrary, that brings out that elections really are supposed to bring out the unity of the Jewish people. Okay, just an introduction to what's going on in the world today. Okay, so we're middle of, in halacha, we're learning the dinam of good midas that a person is supposed to have, good characteristic behavior that the person is supposed to have. The last thing we're learning about anger is a very bad thing. We learned this, we discussed why it's considered like worshiping idols, because you're basically denying that God runs the world and Hashem made it happen to you. And therefore, concerning anger, you have to be an extremist. So he said, normally a person is supposed to be a middle of the road person with two exceptions: haughtiness, ego, and anger. Those two things, a person should be an extremist. Otherwise, a person should not be an extremist. Okay, the next thing over here in Kitzur about good midas, he says a person should, it's a very interesting expression. He said, you should do a lot of silence. In other words, silence is golden. You should only speak words of Torah or words that you need to live. And in the bottom, he brings down it from the Rambam. The Rambam in Pirush Mishnayos classifies all speech into 5 categories of speech, 5 different words, languages of, so to speak, of speech. One is what's a mitzvah, to speak, like Torah and davening. Then you have something which is ahuv, meaning it's loved, and I'll explain each one what it is. Then you have permissible. Then you have forbidden. And the last thing is despicable. Like you can see, okay, let's discuss each one. The first one is speech of a mitzvah. That's about basically the mitzvah of davening, learning Torah, dibarta bam, words of Torah. The second one is things which are proper, lovable, meaning when you speak about the advantage of intellect or how bad lack of intellect is, it's not a mitzvah what you're talking, but nevertheless, it's appropriate speech. You're talking about good things, about how good midas are, or how good intellectual things are, or to praise people that have those advantages and uniquenesses. By the way, there's a very interesting din in halacha. You're not allowed to praise somebody in front of his enemy. Why? Because if you praise somebody in front of his enemy, that's going to cause him to say, yeah, you know what? And go through Lashon Hara. So therefore, in the laws of Lashon Hara, it says you're not allowed to speak good about somebody in front of his enemy, because all you're doing is stimulating the person to speak bad in Lashon Hara and all that. Okay. And third way is things which are permissible. Now, things that are permissible mean business, just living things. The fourth thing is forbidden. It's things which are forbidden. Lashon Hara, rachilus, which is gossip, testifying falsely. And there's a fifth thing, he says, things which are disgusting, nimas. But here in the Rambam, he explains, what does it mean? Nimas means speak dvarim betelim, to speak just worthless words that have no benefit, not for your soul, not for your body, not for anything. Okay? The Gemara speaks about the Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, They said they never spoke sichas chulin me'elam. They never spoke idle words for no reason. Now, dvarim b'telim, it's interesting. You have what's called dvarim asurim, forbidden language. Like we said, lashon hara, gossip, motzi shema, speaking bad about somebody. Those are biblically forbidden. But then you have what's called dvarim b'telim. Dvarim b'telim thing means, batel means there's no purpose in it. Okay? So if you speak things that are just like worthless, what are you just talking about for absolutely no reason? So it's not bad words, you're not saying anything bad, but you're just not, you're not saying anything productive. And you're not doing anything good. And the Rebbe took it even a step further. The Rebbe spoke about it's about himself or whenever it is. Like the Rebbe said, if we speak at a fabrengen for people to do things, they do more Torah mitzvahs and they don't do it. So the Rebbe said, I just spoke dvarim b'telim, worthless words, because whatever I spoke, that didn't have any accomplishment. So if you tell somebody to do something good and they don't listen, so then what you spoke was worthless. So that's also dvarim b'telim. Now dvarim b'telim, again, themselves are not forbidden words. It's not disgusting language. It's not what's called nivel peh, despicable language, not foul language as it's called. So all these things, generally speaking, Chacham said, the best thing is to do shtika, silence. Now, the Gemara, the Mishnah Pirkei of it says, Kol amar b'dvarim mevi chet. Whoever talks a lot brings sin. The source of that, by the way, is Chava. When Chava, the snake came over to her and said, hey, you can't eat from the tree. So she said, she added to what Hashem said. Hashem said, don't eat from the tree. The Chava told the snake, no, we're not allowed to even touch the tree, which wasn't true. She added words. She just added words that were not necessary. And so the Medrash says, what did the snake do? The snake knew that she was lying. That wasn't true. So the snake pushed her against the tree. She touched the tree and nothing happened to her. So the snake said to her, you see, nothing happened to you when you touched it. So when you eat it, nothing's going to happen to you either. But what did she do? She spoke more than what the reality was. And that caused the terrible sin of Chatei Tzadas. So the Gemara says, or the Gemara says, the Mishnah also in Pirkei Avos, Matzasi l'guf tev mishtika. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, I haven't found anything better for the body than silence. Shlomo Melech, it's a pasuk that says, even a fool, when they're silent, can give the impression that they're smart because they're not talking. So Shlomo Melech says, even a fool, when silent, can sound smart, so to speak. So therefore, and then there's another interesting Gemara. Rabbi Gamliel, the famous Rabbi Gamliel, had a famous non-Jewish servant by the name of Tevi. He was a very, very famous, he was a scholar, he was a non-Jew, he was an Eved. Eventually, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel freed him, he became a Jew. He was a big Talmid Chacham. He used to argue with the rabbis in learning. He was a very great tzaddik, a very great scholar. So the Gemara tells a story that Gamliel once gave him money. And he said, I want you to go buy for me the most expensive, the most precious thing in the market. Tevi went and he came back with a tongue. The tongue of an tongue. Then Rabbi Gamliel gave him money again and said, I want you to buy the worst thing for me in the market. He came back with a tongue. So Gamliel said to Tevi, how could a tongue be the best and the worst? So Tevi quoted a pasuk from Mishlei. Shlomo Melech says, "Hachayim v'hamoves b'yad haloshim." Life and death is in the hand of the tongue. You can kill somebody with your mouth, as everybody knows. Verbal abuse, it's called today verbal abuse, is worse in many respects than physical abuse. Emotional abuse is worse than physical abuse. So Tevi told him Gamliel, and the Gemara tells the story. I mean, there's a lesson from it. that a tongue of a person, you could either be the best. When you speak nicely, you compliment somebody. You can make their day. You can make them do a lot of good things. And the other side of the coin is if you embarrass somebody, insult somebody, you can kill them. You have this, it's sad to say, but in schools, there's certain teachers that know how to compliment the child, and they turn the child around just from the compliment of the person. And God forbid they insult a kid, God forbid he could turn off. You don't know the power of language. So therefore, the Gemara says, life and death is in the hand of the tongue. Therefore, unless if it's Torah, with a Torah, learning Torah, the Torah said, then you're supposed to speak a lot of Torah. Like this, the Gemara says another interesting expression. Mila besela, shtika betrei, which means if a word is $1, silence is worth 2. But you know the way Jews turn everything around. They say, okay, yeah, but silence is only once. You're silent the whole time, so you get $2. But every word you say is $1. You can talk 100 words, you get $100. But that's not what the Gemara means. The Gemara says, Mila besela, if a word, Mila is a word, is worth a coin, then silence is 2 coins. So Bachal, as the expression in America goes, if you have nothing to say, don't say it. That's it. So that's what the Gemara learns. Another din in the character traits of a person should not be too joyful, just full of jokes and at the same time you should not be depressed. You shouldn't be too giddy and you shouldn't be too depressed. And there's again the quotes a lot from the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. Schek v'kalas reish, lightheadedness and frivolity cause a person to come to lewdness. You shouldn't be a person that, just all the broad, he just wants everything. You shouldn't be a depressed person. You should have a good eye. You should do a little bit of business, a lot of Torah, and whatever Hashem gives you, you should be happy with. And the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, I'm all disreading from Kitzur Shulchan, which really originates in the Rambam Menachos Deis. The Chacham is saying the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Kina v'taiva v'akavod, jealousy, desires, and glory, honor, meitziin esa'ada min ha'ilam, remove the person from the world. The Rebbe Rashab is a very interesting thing. It says, he speaks here of the Mishnah, Kina v'taiva v'akavod, jealousy, desires, lusts, and seeking honor. There's an expression in the Rebbe Rashab's Maimorim. He says, "Sina machmas kina ein lo takana." Hatred that comes from jealousy can never be rectified. What does that mean? If I hate, let's say you keep hurting me. Okay, so I hate you because of it. So you'll stop hurting me, then I'll stop hating you. You bother me, I hate you. Stop bothering me, I won't hate you anymore. Hatred that comes from something, when the person stops doing it, you'll stop hating you. Jealousy is deeply rooted. Jealousy, you're not doing anything to me. You're just better than me, and I'm jealous of what you have. That jealousy is so deeply rooted. What's the guy going to become a bum? You're going to feel better? No. So that's the worst thing, the worst type of jealousy. Kina is the worst type of midah because kina can never be rectified. Jealousy can never be rectified. Yet Chazal tell us like this. When it comes to physical things, the Mishnah says, Ezel Asher, who is a rich person, not one that has billions, not a Hasameach b'chalkei. You're happy with what you have. A person is happy with what they have, then they're wealthy. They have what they need, they have what they want. The Shlomo Melech says a pasuk, Ohev kesef, lo yizba kesef. A person who loves money will never be satisfied. No matter what he has, he wants more. You have 100, you want 200, you want 200, 400, 400. you'll never be happy. You'll be miserable. You get miserable because you have no life. You're afraid you're going to lose it. Like this, you're happy with what you have. That's good. But the Gemara says that kinas sofrim tarba chachma. When you're jealous of somebody who is a scholar or somebody who's a good person, gives tzedakah, kind person, good-hearted person, that is good because that brings it to do more. And therefore, there's a Hasidic interpretation. We say in Aleinu every day, okay, 3 times a day, in fact, the pasuk in Chumash. V'yadaita hayom ma'sheveisa levavecha. You should know today, put to your heart, K'Hashemu Elokim, the God is God. B'shamayim mimal, in the heaven above, B'ala'aretz mitachas, in the earth below, Einay. There's only God. So simply, what is the pasuk saying? The God is the only one in the heaven above and the earth below, and Einay, there's nobody but God. There's nothing but God. There's a Hasidic interpretation like this. Bashamayim, the pasuk of Shemayim mimal, in the heavens above. So Bashamayim means when it comes to heavenly things, Torah, mitzvahs, good character, mimal, always look up. Oh, that guy's better than me, I should also become better. Ba'aretz simply means Ba'aretz mitachas, in the earth below. Ba'aretz, in earthly things, mitachas, look at the person below you. He doesn't have it, so why do I need it? In heavenly things, you're supposed to look up. They want what they have. In earthly things, you say, if they don't have it, then why should I want it? You know, when the car phone still, there were 2 rich people that were always competing with each other. So when the car phones came out, this is the way the joke goes. Car phones came up. So Jack calls Joe. And he says, hey, Joe, you know where I'm calling you from? He said, my car phone. So right away, Joe gets jealous. And he runs out and he gets a car phone. Because Jack had it. So now Joe is calling Jack from his car phone to Jack's car phone. And he says, Jack, hi, it's Joe. You know where I'm calling you from? From my new car phone. So Jack says, 1 minute, my other car phone is ringing. You know what I mean? You're never going to be happy. So a person, Simech B'chalkei, that's what the Mishnah says. And jealousy and covet and all that takes a person out of the world. It's interesting, you know, we have to live with the times. What did I recently in Ayen, I saw an article years ago. Why in the world would somebody want to be the president of the United States? And they said like this: money, you make more in the private sector than you do a president. You don't get paid that much. People in the private sector make more money. You have no more private life. You're scrutinized. People hate you. I mean, no money, no COVID. Like, I mean, no. Why does somebody want to be president? And they said just for the glory of it, the COVID, you get all the honor, president of the United States. They said for that, people go crazy. You know, think about it. What should you have no life? Your Secret Service, wherever you go, you have to be followed in it. It is. Okay. So now it goes to the opposite extreme. So Kitzer says, so maybe somebody will come along and say, if all these things are no good, I'll be an extremist. I won't eat meat, and I won't drink wine, and I won't get married, and I won't have a nice house. I won't wear nice clothing. I'll wear sack and ashes, because after all, you know, that's what you're telling me, that you should be not into gashmistic things. So he says in Kitzer, and this is all from the Rambam again, it's also evil. But also, and you're forbidden, it's Torah, according to Torah, it's forbidden to follow this hermit style of living. It's forbidden, especially the Baal Shem Tov came and really knocked it, that it's not something to do. And not only that, the Gemara says, whoever does that is called a sinner. Why? Where do we find this? Where do we find that somebody is an extremist above and beyond what the Torah allows him to do is called a sinner? The Gemara says we find this by a Nazir, a Nazirite. He says, okay, I'm not going to drink wine. I'm not going to go to cemeteries. I'm going to not cut my hair. I'm going to be a super holy Jew. And the Torah calls him holy, by the way. But at the end of him being a Nazir, when it finishes, so usually it's 30 days, but you can make it as long as you want. So he has to bring a sin offering. Karban Chatas, a sin offering. So the Gemara asks, Yushalmi, but Babli brings it down too. The Yushalmi asks, why does a person, he's a holy guy. He separated himself from wine. He separated himself from going to cemeteries. He doesn't cut his hair. He's holy, So why is he called a sinner? And the Gemara says the expression as follows. Dayach mashasar talach Torah. It's enough what the Torah forbids. Meaning, don't be more religious than the books. If the Torah says you can eat it, eat it. If the Torah says you can have wine, don't be more religious than the Torah and say, I'm not going to drink wine. If the Torah says you can go to, unless you're a Kohen, but you can go to cemeteries, you can cut your hair, why are you more religious than the Torah? That's sin. Don't be more religious than the book. So when should a person be a Nazir? The Torah speaks about people being Nazir, and the Gemara calls him holy. The Torah calls him holy. So the Sfarim say very simple. If a normal person should not become a Nazir. A middle-of-the-road person should not become a Nazir. What the Torah allows you to eat, you eat, because then you elevate it when you eat it. What the Torah says you're not allowed to eat, you don't eat. You're not more religious than the Torah. But what happens if a person was, let's say, addicted to wine, and wine affected them in a Yiddishkeit negative way? So then you need to become an extremist, like we said. We said the other week, if the branch is bent in the middle, normally you make a tree grow in the middle. The branch is bent all the way to the left. The only way you're going to get it back to the middle is if you bend it all the way to the right. So otherwise, Torah says if Torah allows you to do it. In fact, there's a very interesting argument in halacha. We know, let's say, to give an example, meat and milk fall into each other. So if there's 60 times the amount, it's kosher, right? If a little bit of milk falls into meat and the meat is 60 times the amount of the milk, you're allowed to eat the soup. It's kosher. So now the question is, can a Jew come along and say, I don't want to eat it? Granted, Torah says it's kosher, but I don't want to eat it. There's two opinions in halacha. One opinion says you're not allowed to do that. Okay? Some people say because Torah says it's kosher, and I'm saying no, it's not kosher. I'm not eating because I'm saying it's not kosher. So there is a concept sometimes that Torah says allowed, then you do it. And that's a very important thing. Now, another thing is like this. It's forbidden. I know the Sephardic community, it's interesting. The Sephardim always had this inyan of fasting a lot. Their thing was fasting. And they still do it. It's against the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, against Tanya, against what the Rebbe teaches us. But it says a person should not be fasting. Even fasts for tshuva, a person wants to fast it out. The Rebbe speaks about in Tanya, the Rebbe writes today, we don't do those things. The Rebbe writes, even those fasting and torturing ourselves. Now, there's a difference between that and what Chassidim, there's an expression by Chassidim, and this is sometimes a very fine line, but we have to be aware of it. There was a Yiddish expression by Chassidim of yesteryear, was metarnish tarminish, was memeg darfminish, which means in English, what you're not allowed to, and what you are allowed to, who says you have to do it? I feel, when that says his mutter, was metarnish tarminish, who says you need to do it? So they were Chassidim of yesterday, but they weren't torturing themselves. They weren't fasting. They didn't do those things. What they did is they just didn't overindulge in worldly things. They just felt I would like to refine myself, refine my body, refine my soul. But that's not what the concept of don't be more religious in the Torah. In fact, Shlomo Melech says in the pasuk also in Mishlei, and I'm sorry, in Keheles, out to heat tzaddik harbe, don't be too big of a tzaddik, but this chakam yosef, and don't get too smart. Okay, so again, the halacha is emphasizing that a person needs to be a middle of the road person. Next thing in here is like this. There was in fact, in Vaad Rabbonim Lubavitch, it opens up. It's also a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It says, Yudah ben Tema Emer, you should be as kanemet, bold like a lion, like a leopard, bold like a leopard. What does it mean? The Mepharshim explained, Al Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch what it means. Al yevesh mipnei hamaligim. Don't be embarrassed from the scoffers. If people make fun, you're doing mitzvahs, they're making fun of you, don't be embarrassed. It's the first thing in Al Rebbe Shulchan Aruch of the entire Shulchan Aruch is Al yevesh mipnei hamaligim. Don't be embarrassed from the scoffers. Do what you have to do. So, nevertheless, boldness is connected to chutzpah, really. Bold means there's a little chutzpah. But nevertheless, Shulchan Aruch says, Shulchan Aruch says, the Rebbe brings it down also. Don't answer people with chutzpah. Because chutzpah is not a good trait. When you need chutzpah, in other words, people are making fun of you or doing mitzvahs and they're insulting, whatever. So then don't acquire the trait of chutzpah. Chutzpah is not a good trait. When you need it, then you use it. If somebody's making fun of you, you don't answer them with chutzpah. You just do what you got to do. You answer them nicely, and then you do what you got to do. But the trait of chutzpah is not a Jewish trait. It's not something, even though Jews are known to have chutzpah. But if not, I guess we wouldn't be surviving today if Jews didn't have chutzpah throughout history to live through all the trials and tribulations and all the difficulties. But generally speaking, in life, people should not have chutzpah. Children have to be taught not to be chutzpahdik, not to parents, not to their friends, not to their teachers. Generally, chutzpah is it. So again, Shulchan Aruch says, Al Yevich Minam Az Kademi should be bold. Bold, the Mepharshim translators, chutzpah from the people that, but that's in your action, but not in your reaction. You shouldn't be speaking to them chutzpah and all that. Okay, that's it for tonight. And halacha, now we're going to go to Tanya.